feel like I look better. The last time I was really drunk.
It always makes for good conversation, though.
It does. Oh, it just smells good.
It's something coconut, and so that is coconut moonshine from Old Forge Distillery.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, but should be. I'm not good at this. Like, I'm spilling this everywhere. I'm
Well,
used
I
to
got
just
leaves
having
all
to...
in here, but I'm going to drink them.
How am I going to get these nails off? Katie said I should soak them. Damn,
You
it
should.
takes forever.
Or you could go to my nail lady today who took another nail to pry off an actual dip acrylic coating.
Oh, I hate
It
when
was
they
the
do
most
that.
vicious thing I've ever had done in a nail salon.
They're so ruthless with that. They're like, oh, it doesn't hurt. I
And
bet
was-
it doesn't hurt
I just
you.
sat there. I was like sitting there wincing. I'm like, she sees my face and nothing, does nothing. She's no empathy, sympathy, nothing.
No, they
She's
don't
just
give a shit. They're like,
"Fuck
quit being a
you, lady."
bitch.
Hey, what's that? Is
This
that the
is
moonshine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Make it a little more
I
coconutty.
missed the key ingredient. Yeah, there's just all kinds of leaves in there.
You're supposed to read those afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
Pour
I
them
know
out
they
onto a
tell me.
napkin.
Oh, you pour them out?
I don't know. I think maybe you keep them in the cup. I don't know. Seen it done
I don't know.
differently.
I feel like we need like a
Depends
a
on what kind of
gypsy
witch you
lady.
are, I
Yeah,
guess.
like a gypsy to come do this for me because I don't know what we're doing. We're gonna do tea
Tea
time.
time. Welcome to the every time hot mess tea party.
Obviously.
We're the only mess. No, we're the only tea we spill is our own for the most part.
Oh, we're gonna spill some others' tea today because I'm in the
For
mood.
the most.
I'm in the mood to drag some bitches.
Today we're going to talk about abuse. That's fun. That's a fun topic. So, some quick stats because I know all kinds of stuff about this. Every time I do a paper, it's on abuse because it's just a really easy topic for me to write about. I'm just like, oh yeah, I get to pick my own topic. Shit, let's go with abuse. 1 in 4 women will be abused. That's a really high number. You know what's fucked up? You can't find the number of men who will abuse. There is 1 in 4 women will experience abuse, but how many men will abuse? Who knows? Because that statistic does not exist. But it also doesn't say like how many of those stay. It's a really gray area.
I've seen a lot in my day, and I've been through a lot in my day. You know, I have an outstanding, criminal case involving a stupid
really
ass.
good.
Yeah, it is really good.
Shit, how do we keep knocking these out of the park
I
every
don't know,
week?
but I kind of want more of this. It's like 12 degrees outside, and this is warming my little tum tum.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's drag some assholes. Let's drag some abuse. Abuse is one of those things that, I mean, we say 1 in 4, but you've experienced it and I've experienced it, and
But like that's 25% of women. That's
Yeah.
very high. That's super high. But you know, a lot of people are like, oh, why does she stay? Blah, blah, blah. But okay, let's go over the characteristics of an abuser because you tell me if you would know that you were entering into a abusive relationship. Super charming. They're perfect. They're perfect from the outside. They're usually a pillar of the community. They're very fast to sweep you off your feet, very fast to tell you they love you, how much like you are it. They can't believe they finally found the person that they want to spend the rest of their lives with. And this is like within the first month.
right.
It's not easy to see.
It's very love bombing.
Yeah.
They're usually, and that's the hardest for a lot of women because, you know, if you get a woman who was in an abusive relationship and then she in turn meets another guy and she's so starved for love and affection that most abused women continue the cycle of abuse. They go back into more abusive relationships.
Yeah.
And they continue that until they break the cycle. And usually it's a lot of self-care and a lot of healing. And that comes with just staying the hell away from these men. I mean, it's so hard to do. And there are lots of good men. I've met loads of them, and we don't want to drag good men for sure. But, you know, the abuse is so hard. Sometimes it's in your face. And a lot of times we just don't want to see it. And
there are like red flags early on that can be easily dismissed because of the love bombing, like jealousy.
Yes, the jealousy is the
Yeah, he
number
shouldn't
one.
be concerned with what's on your phone early on.
Social media is another thing. You know, I've learned that the guy that I'm currently dating was a trigger for me after coming out of an abusive relationship, and it wasn't a physically abusive one, but it was an emotionally abusive one. Which, I mean, to me, they're the hardest to get any sympathy from.
Yep.
Because most of it is done behind closed doors, and you don't really know the extent of the full damage until it's over.
And the people who know him, like his friends, they would probably never believe if you're like, I get abused.
And that was another
right.
red flag. He didn't have any friends. Like, he didn't have any close friends. He was just a jackass. And I met him, and I had known him, a long time. I'd never dated him, and which were two wildly different things. And so when I did, the red flags were there, and it wasn't so obvious to me until it was over. Mm-hmm. They started out very, very small, and it was so eye-opening. Now, it's 2 years after we broke up, and I still find myself triggered by certain things. I have a hard time expressing myself in a healthy manner because I'm scared. There's a fear there because it was I walked on eggshells continually for 2 years, and it didn't matter what I did. It was wrong. It didn't matter what road I took to do the right thing with him. It was always going to be the wrong one, and you can't win with them. But it started out very small, and it started out with the love bombing. It was I knew I was supposed to, I knew we were destined to be here, and you're amazing, and you're the best person I've ever met. And it was the love notes with the coffee, and it was the never-ending affection and the compliments. And then those compliments turned into backhanded compliments, which turned into outright abuse. And the jealousy over the social media was a big one, which is what I wish that I had listened to my gut right out of the gate with the jealousy. It almost always turns into a form of abuse. Mm-hmm. And I say it's almost a 99% accuracy, because in every situation, every woman I've dealt with that have had a jealous partner early on in the relationship had to get out for an abusive situation, whether it be an emotional abuse or physical abuse. It manifested itself one way or the other, and with him, it was my social media. And it would be so innocent as a guy liking a post that I posted. Guy I never talked to, guy I wasn't giving any attention to, but somebody liked it because they were Facebook friends and they may have been interested. And at the time, our relationship was so new that it wasn't being blasted on social media because, how is that guy wrong for seeing a woman on Facebook and wanting, so there were things that I stopped doing. I stopped posting thirst traps. You stop posting pictures, and
right.
You stop engaging in the behavior that is going to get you a lot of attention.
Right, like single behavior.
Single behavior. It's there, and a lot of girls out here want to deny that they do it, and
right.
then they'll complain. They'll complain because the boyfriend doesn't like it, and I'm like, yeah, there's two sides to that. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you get in a relationship and you want it to last, there has to be a level of meeting somewhere in the middle there. Mm-hmm. You have to stop debating. Yeah. You have to stop debating and acting as if you're single. And so I didn't post those things. I'd post pictures of my kids, and different things. And he would just fly off the freaking handle. And so that was 4 years ago. And here I am in my new current relationship. And I find myself hesitating to want to say things to him when it has never been a situation with him. There's never been a word said. There's never been a jealous assumption. And, we're months and months in at this point, and that is something that I'm slowly learning that is being healed, and I'm paying attention to it, that I can open my mouth and speak honesty and speak truth and feel like I can do that without the backlash.
Well, on top of jealousy, another one of the really early warning signs is that they may get mad at something, and it'll be something small, but they overreact to it. Like, their reaction is going to be it doesn't match what they're reacting to.
Yeah.
At all. Like, flying off the handle because some random person liked your stuff. That's not normal.
Yeah, and it was like I was just as innocent as a dad, like a baseball dad, standing next to me and saying something about our kids at a ballpark. And he was so backwards that instead of coming over and joining the conversation, he stood back and watched to see what I'd do. Mm-hmm. And that was so unnerving to me, all these years, like to pay attention and start really thinking about the abuse. And, the end of the relationship, it was, I was being accused of cheating constantly. And I was home being the most boring person ever. and going to bed by myself. And the whole time he was on dating apps and hooking up with girls behind my back. But I was the bad guy, you know, like you're always
It's
the
so
bad
crazy.
guy. Like,
They're such different people, but their MOs are all the same.
it is just an ego
It's
stroke.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like they are for real textbook. You can take almost any abusive person and we can all sit here and rattle off the exact same things that happen to us.
Yeah.
The jealousy, the being accused of cheating, the love bombing.
Yeah.
Like everybody, even though all these abusive people are coming from like different walks of life, they're all so similar.
The gaslighting is the other one.
Oh.
Holy
Yes.
shit at the gaslighting. I never knew the term until I went into therapy after this last relationship, and I learned what gaslighting really was. And you can argue a situation, and that was a weird sexual situation with this one, that he would say things in the midst of that, and then argue that he mentioned once, and this was a true story. This is the craziest thing that ever happened. I'm gonna drag him because I don't give a shit on this podcast. We're gonna drag him. He mentioned like in bed that he wanted a threesome, and not just any threesome. He wanted another guy, and I was like, it was something that was new to me, and I'm like, not my bag, not really. So it's very vocal about, maybe not. And I thought he was just, talking dirty. I thought maybe that it was just something he was trying on for size, until the conversations came up after. And I was so uncomfortable with them because it was a clear no. It was a clear, hey, this is, I don't judge people for anything they're into. Absolutely zero judgment. I am all love, everybody all love, but, wasn't something I wanted, and certainly wasn't something I wanted in a relationship.
Right.
And so I was very vocal about, nah, I didn't say that. But he was very, he would argue, you did say that. You very much wanted this. And it continued on until one day I had a panic attack in the middle of a conversation of him trying to convince me that I had said that I wanted it. And nothing had felt more humiliating and more degrading than that conversation being twisted. Mm-hmm. Because it was something that I felt like would, it just didn't feel good to me to even be talking about it. And to him, it was, yeah, you said you wanted this, and I know you wanted this, and this was why I think you wanted this. And he would continue with this gaslighting until he thought he could make me admit that I wanted it. And I remembered a conversation that I had with him about his ex-wife, and it was like light bulb went off, and it made me want to hug her because of situations he had told me that went on in their marriage that I feel like she was gaslighted, had to have been gaslighted into this. And I don't know that that's her truth, but it felt that way, that, they're obviously divorced. I would bet good money that he gaslit her into doing things she really didn't want to do. And that is a whole other topic of abuse. And it happens so easily in relationships you would not even be aware of. I mean, I'm like typical soccer mom, and I would, if I sat and had that conversation with the new guy that I was dating, that happened to me, he couldn't comprehend it, because to him, he's like, I can't even imagine sitting down and doing that to a woman. Just the conversation alone and the gaslighting of, yeah, you wanted this. Why can't you admit to this? Why can't you admit to it? We could go on about Love is Blind all day. Like, are you guys watching this new season?
Oh my God.
Speaking of abuse.
Jesus.
Has anybody checked on Colleen?
I was just about to ask that.
Are we going to check on
Did you
her?
see her at the reunion? She looked so
She looked terrified. She looked
when
like...
they played back that clip, she was like almost shaking.
So I related my situation with
when
Colleen because I dated that guy. I dated Matt. The one who would
25% of us have.
Yes, the one who he'd been so hurt, and I'm like, you know what? I saw a lot of people on TikTok that were defending this guy.
Ugh.
Defending him because they're like,
what?
because he had been through some shit.
They all say that though.
He'd been through some shit, and I thought, you know what? Deal with it. We've all been through some shit, but that doesn't mean destroy another person.
The person before you cheated on me. The person before you really hurt me. I have these trust issues because the person before you did this. It's always that. But when you go to that person and you finally find them and you're like, hey, what happened? They're like, dude, this guy was fucking crazy.
Crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy. Matt, Colleen,
honey,
we're here for you.
There is an 800 number that I will link
I was a ballerina once too, maybe 60 pounds ago. But
I feel like we should do a podcast on just Love is Blind, because
I could go on about this horrific.
if I heard I'm a ballerina one more time, I was gonna lose.
I think they edited her so horribly, because I just don't. I mean, I believe that was something she was proud of, and I think that the way they edited her made it seem. But I mean, you imagine there's talking to like 20, 30 different people, and she's got to tell the same life story to everybody, and they did her dirty. They edited her. They did her and Cole real dirty.
Poor Cole.
But I don't want to defend Cole.
You want to
either.
talk about, okay, but he kind of seemed like he was on the receiving end of abuse at that reunion, because he started crying and apologizing, like, I'm sorry that I did that to you. I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. But I think they purposely left that clip in at the very end to show that no, things were not actually happening the way she was saying they were.
I've got nothing for the Love is Blind producers, because if they were decent people, they would have saved Colleen from the situation that she found herself in. And I will stand by this 100%. I will 100% stand by that she is in an abusive situation. I think most women who have been through that can recognize the triggers. The accusations from him to her, he could have had that
following
conversation.
her into the bathroom.
Yes.
When she tried to get away.
Yes, when she was very much trying
hacking up all of his stuff. I'm leaving because
the threats.
You went out.
Yes.
You said you were going to come home. She didn't say she was going to come straight home. She said, I'll meet you back there.
They're
meanwhile,
filming
they
a
went
show. Like, that's what's so great. The grace, like, that he should have given her, it was girls. She was with all the girls.
Right.
And the grace he should have given her, they're in their city. They're being led around town by
a whole camera crew.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, who gets to say they do that in their lifetime? Like, you get one opportunity to live your life up, and they were just taking an opportunity.
I'm sure they were being comped everywhere they went. Like, they were just living it up.
Yeah, they were
in that moment.
Being young and having this exciting time. Like, I'm here for it. Do girl stuff. But any man that loves you should trust you. There should be, and I understand their situation's hard because they really haven't had enough time in the real world, as they talked about, to build that trust, because real life trust takes spending lots of time together.
Yeah.
Lots of interactions with other people, and they didn't have any of that. They were confined to a bubble, and they had to trust that these people were who they said they were. In Matt's defense, he doesn't know. He's very damaged, and I don't want to be so quick to say he's a terrible person, because maybe he's not. He has lots of people obviously that love him and care about him, that know his situation. But his situation with her, I'm scared for her, because at the reunion she was visibly terrified. They kept saying, well, she was nervous about them airing the clip of her and Colt. She was 100% honest. By the way, 100% honest with him. They showed the clip of her being honest about what went on with her and Cole at the pool. And then she knew that she was 100% honest. But that behavior that he exhibited was exactly like my ex. It didn't really matter if she had told the truth. It really didn't matter, because she was going to pay for it one way or the other.
And you could see it all over her face as they were rolling. She was
terrified.
And she's just kind of looking at him like, oh my God.
She knew what happened. And
I'm going to have to live this again when we get home.
Yes, it was 100%. I could see it on her face. She just knew the second they left that studio, it was going to be another fight. Or if it was like anything like my ex, it was going to be cold shoulder the whole way home, and her walking on eggshells to be careful about saying anything to set him off, because he's an angry guy.
Yeah, at that point, it may be that he knows he can't rehash this with her, because that looks bad on him, but
he can't do it at the reunion for sure.
Yeah. He's gonna find something at that point. So I'm sure that ride home.
We're gonna put him and then Barqueef, or whatever his name is. We pick Barqueef and Coleslaw. I like Coleslaw. He seems like very much a man child that just does not have his. He seems like a good. Like I'm gonna be honest. I really liked Cole from the get go, and I thought Cole was really. What did you do? No, did you lose a nail? One down.
So I'm just gonna.
We got one down.
Like this for the rest of the time.
See, maybe you can like.
I was wondering how to get them off.
Use that nail to pop the other ones off.
Yeah, I was wondering how to get them off.
But yeah, Zanab. Zenab.
I wasn't a fan.
I don't want to drag her because I feel like the internet's doing a good enough job of dragging her on their own. But she also, let's get a therapist for her and Matt. Barqueef, Barstool, whatever his name is. We don't care. We really don't care. Nobody cared about you.
But let's do like our own podcast on that, and we'll go through and we'll like break down the episodes and what we see, and then let's just like come back onto our topic, even though it was on topic.
I could go on about this because I just finished Love Is Blind.
So much to talk about on there. How many abusive relationships have you been in?
So I have been, and I would say that I've only been in 2. And I'm glad to say that the 2 that I was in, it was enough, I think. I can't count my marriage because, my ex-husband would have never, ever, he never laid a hand on me, and he spoke my love language. He was very much,
I think instead of abuse, that was more like he has a problem.
He had a problem, and he was a womanizer, and I wouldn't drag him for just wholeheartedly being a bad person. We were very compatible people that got married way too young, and that happens to a lot of people. And I can be mature 8 years later. I can be mature enough to go. It's unfortunate that we're here and having to share 2 families, but I'm grateful that I can look back on it and recognize that we got married too young. Really, the more I reflect on it is paying attention to who you're dating and what kind of person they really are and where they come from.
Which is hard to do when you're that young, though.
It is really hard, and you just want to, and you're just so ready to start your life, and that's where we were. But he would have never, and so I set the bar with him, and I think that was hard for me having relationships moving past that, because he was the type of man, even at 250 pounds, he still told me I was beautiful every single day, and still, I mean, he was a thoughtful person, and he was a loving person, and he was there. There was a lot of good, and towards the end of our marriage, there was, more bad. There wasn't enough to hold on to it anymore. So I set the bar with him. So I waited a good year after my divorce to start dating again. And I started with the dating apps. And I learned a hard lesson. And I was it was maybe a year after our divorce, and he had gotten really serious with the girl he cheated on me with, and it was really hard to watch. I was very lonely, and I just kind of think I was reaching because I had not really healed. I had not had enough time to heal from what I had been through. So I held on to something I shouldn't have. And we're going to name him. I will throw out his name. He can sue, whatever he wants to do.
You're just going to get it right back.
Yeah. But he was a guy, he was a bass player named Nolan.
Oh, I thought you were the other guy.
No, this one's a better story. So he was a bass player named Nolan I met on a website called Plenty of Fish. I was on there for about
hate that site.
Yes, it's awful. It's awful. And so I joined it because out of stupidity. And I was on there about 15 or 20 minutes, and he messaged me, and he seemed like a super interesting person because he was. He was a musician. He had played with a lot of really cool people. He was a great songwriter. I mean, he was a talented guy. Physically not my type, not at all the type of guy that I would typically date. But when I say that I was at rock bottom, I was so lonely, and about a week after I met this guy, I went on a date with him. I was not sure that I liked him. It wasn't a bad date. It was just like, I didn't know how I felt about him, but he just was a constant. He would not leave me alone. He was giving me a constant attention at the time I wasn't getting from anybody else. Mm-hmm. And so he just kind of continued on, and I had a nightmare situation that went on with my ex and his girlfriend. And so almost in rebellion, I continued this relationship. Everybody in my life hated this guy because he was an absolute jackass. He was rude to me. He wasn't nice to my kids, really. And he wasn't around them very often, and for good reason. He pushed himself in without me asking. It was not a conversation of, hey, do you want to come meet my kids? I think this is a good thing. I never saw any future with him. But he pushed his way in the door, and I was so broken, and a lot of women can relate to that. I was so broken that I just allowed it. And instead of just standing on my own 2 feet and being like, fuck off, dude. Like, no, you're not going to do this. This is where I stand and this is my opinions. No. And instead of doing that, he just barged his way into my life and continued to be an absolute abusive piece of shit. Not only was he drank all the time. It was just morning, noon, and night he drank, and a lot of it he hid from me. I didn't even realize how bad it was because he was a functioning alcoholic to most points. And he wasn't working. He was a musician, and you just kind of ignore it. Like, I had my own house, my own job. I didn't have to support him or worry about him supporting me. So I just allowed a situation to go on. And, 6 months, it felt like the whole relationship was me trying to get rid of him. I just didn't really want him around. I just allowed him to be there, more or less. And he come over one night, and it was a realization. He drank a lot, and he had asked me to marry him. He was drunk, and I said no. And he couldn't understand why I wouldn't marry him. And so I asked him a very poignant question, which was, what would you do if I got sick and got cancer? That's something that happens in a lot of marriages. I said, what happens? I said, you're not working. We buy a house. I said, am I required to carry the weight of a family? Like, what do you want from this? Because I don't want to marry somebody that I could not rely on. And he said, I absolutely would not be paying bills over here, and your kids are not my kids. And I said, that's all I needed to know. And he said, I don't understand why you'd ask me that question. And I said, because you don't marry somebody. I said, I have 2 children. I said, I would not ever marry somebody that would not pick the weight up if I was to get sick. Like, you're absolutely out of your effing mind. It's just crazy. And so instead he accused me of being a gold digger. Because this dude had 20 grand in army money in his account, and he thought he was balling. Fucking idiot. And he just thinks like, you think I'm coming after your 20 grand, sir? Give me some crumbs here, stupid ass. Anyway, he thought, it's just gold digging. And I was like, because I asked you a very important question that you should ask anybody you're planning on marrying. And so he, in turn, calls me a gold digger. He gets in my face and puts a fist in my refrigerator. He left a dent the size of his teacup in my fridge that I had to look at for years until I could replace it.
He dip into that $20,000 to replace it?
No, he didn't replace it. He said he punched it. He punched a light out in my living room. Like, he'd just come in and he'd do crazy shit like that all the time. And I asked him to leave. So the kicker, and I try not to drag this out, but this is a great story. It really is a great story of abuse, because this is important, and I think all women need to listen to this as far as the dating has. And any kind of guy, the first red flag, send them home. The first red flag. There are so many men out here, and there are so many men, and I say this wholeheartedly, they're at work. They're blue-collar boys. They're going to work. Those men are the men that aren't going to bother you with this crap. Those men, there's tons of them out here that are good, decent men. Do not sit here and try to make a mansion out of a molehill with these loser-ass dudes, because this was where I wound up with this guy. He wouldn't go away. Even after the situation, I still allowed him to come around. At that point, I did not allow him to be there when my children were there. And he knew good and well he couldn't be there drinking with my kids there. I didn't really want him there, so I made sure he didn't come over with my kids. And I ended up having to have a surgery. I had a septoplasty. I had a deviated septum. I never did cocaine. Let's just disclaimer. Didn't do cocaine or, fall. And I won every fight I ever had. So, it was just like a birth defect. And I had this surgery, and he's trying to make amends. Like, I'll come take care of you. And I'm like, all right, well, I had nobody else there. It was either him or my mother, and, I didn't really want that situation either. I love my mom. Don't take that poorly. I do love my mother, but she allowed him. He didn't come to the hospital when I had the surgery. My mother drove me to the hospital, had the surgery, and he drives there. He gets there after my surgery's over, and I had to ride home in his stinking ass truck, and I'm stoned out of my mind. And he takes me home to the house where I rested, recovered, and just, he didn't have to do anything. I just kind of hung around the house. I could walk around and do stuff. And he took his time to use my internet and drink. And that's what he did, and watch football the entirety. It was like 2 days of him being at my house. And so day 3, was Veterans Day. And there's like a nerve that goes up in there apparently, and something had triggered it, is what they think at the hospital. We really don't even know. But I took a shower, and he wants to go get his Veterans Day meal because that was super important. So he was like, you think you feel good to go get Veterans Day meal? I said, sure. I get a shower, and I walk in the kitchen, and I fell out face planted in the floor, passed out. And I woke up to 2 paramedics in the floor and him standing about 10 feet away freaking out. Like, I could see it on his face. He was scared that they would think he did something to me. Instead
That's kind of a weird first thought.
Isn't that weird? It's a weird, and it was awfully telling for how things went. But he was standing away, and I remember, like, it was cold. It's like November, and he stood back. It was 2 paramedics, and one of them was my second cousin, who I could see on his face he was concerned by, who is this dude in your house? Like, who is this loser? And he's over there telling him, I don't know what happened. I was laying in a pool of drool. I'd laid there so long that I had left a pool of drool in the floor. So he had his back turned to me and had never acknowledged that I face planted in the floor. He just sat there and drank on my couch. No clue how long I had been laying there. And they took me in an ambulance to have me checked out at the hospital, and I had no socks on. I was barely dressed. I had a tank top on in the middle of November, and it's freezing. No socks, no shoes, no nothing. And this motherfucker didn't even come to the hospital. Instead, he calls my mom and my dad and never comes down to the hospital. Instead, he drives himself down the street to the liquor store and buys a case of beer, drives back to my house, and starts updating my friends and family on my condition from my fucking living room. No shit. And never comes to the hospital, never comes to check on me, doesn't do anything. And instead he's just like, this is her parents' problem. And he was too drunk to drive all the way to the hospital. He didn't want to go down to the hospital because he was drunk, and he didn't want to have to explain to people what happened to me. So as we're at the hospital, my mother said, what are you going to do? How are you going to get him out of your house? And she said, he can squat at this point. You're going to have to have a game plan to get him out. So my first thought was to come home and just tell him he needed to go. I came home and went to sleep because I was very tired. And the next morning I got up and asked him if he would go home. He didn't want to go home, and instead it turned into an argument. And I said, you don't live here, and we are no longer together. I said, that was the most humiliating experience of my entire life. I said, for me to be at the house with a man who claimed to be my boyfriend and to not come to the hospital, and my dad to sit across from me and, look at me like I'm an ignorant, and I was just so humiliated. And I said, you have to get out of the house. Instead, he in turn starts hurling obscenities at me. I mean, cunt, bitch, fat bitch, all the fun comments. So I threw a beer, like a loaded can, at his head, and it missed his head by about 2 inches. And that's the only regret that I have, is that I didn't hit him with the beer can. But when I threw it, it hit the door on the way out. And I told him to get his stuff and just leave my house. I said, don't come back. I said, I want you to get out. And so he spent 3 days harassing me via social media, harassing my friends via social media. And then the harassment turned into I'm sorries. And I said, look, we're not getting...
As they do.
I said, we're not getting back together. And he said, I understand, and I just still want to be friends. So, me being stupid, I allowed it. And I ended things. I effectively felt like I had peacefully ended things with this guy, and my grandmother dies. And this drunk motherfucker calls me in the middle of my grandmother's wake because he planned on showing up and couldn't find the place. Nobody invited you. Nobody. Instead, he's cussing me at my grandmother's wake. Shows up drunk to my grandmother's funeral, cussing me in the lobby at her funeral, and I had to suck it up and act like nothing was wrong. And my parents were looking at me like, why is he here? And I had to tell my parents in the parking lot, I didn't invite him here. And instead I just kept my mouth shut to avoid making a scene. I just lost one of my favorite people in the whole world. It was horrible. So I was just like, what are you doing here? And after he left, I was like, you weren't invited to this funeral. And he's like, well, I didn't think you had to be invited to a funeral. And I thought, it was a level of fear I had.
You do.
I started really getting kind of scared of this guy because he was putting himself in my life where he wasn't wanted. So, the week after, this, we had our Christmas party, and me and my kids had been out. We come home late one evening, and his truck's in my driveway. And at that time, I wasn't just scared. I didn't think he would actually put hands or hurt me and the kids. But I walked in. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I immediately took my kids and put them in one bedroom and turned the TV on because I thought this could get ugly and I'm gonna have to get him out of the house. And I didn't know how at that moment. He was wasted, and he had not only was he wasted, he had went to the liquor store and bought $100 and something worth of liquor, beer, all of it, and had hid it in the cabinets of my home. Uninvited. He had let himself in using my door code. My key. I have a door code now, but he let himself in, and I was like, well, what are you doing here? You can't be here. And he said, I just want to have a conversation. So I allowed him to have the conversation, and I said, we are not together. We will never be together. I said, and I said, you have to go home. And I thought in the back of my head, I just need to diffuse this situation. If I can just calmly get him to leave, that would be better for everybody. And at that point, I was starting to get scared, and I was getting more and more frustrated with him. So I said, you have to get out of my house. And when I said that, he stomped his foot and got in my face, and he said, I will fucking stomp you into the ground. And I was scared. And he took a step back when he realized what he did and starts apologizing profusely. I'm sorry, that's not me, and I just, I love you, and I would never do that. I would never hurt you or your kids. And I said, that's fine. And I just sucked it up. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to have to call the cops. I sucked it up and tried to talk him down. And instead, it carried on into the evening, and I sat in a recliner trying to just talk. He just wanted to talk, and he was getting more and more drunk. And he walks, and I'd closed my eyes for 2 seconds. And when I opened my eyes, he was in my fridge with a bottle of vodka, just turning it up, drinking it like it was water. And I snapped. And at that point, I said the only thing that I could do at that point to get him out was to pour every drop of alcohol that I had in the house down the drain. Because if I could pour it all down the drain, he would leave, and I could call the police and have him trespassed. And that was the only thought that I had. I was stone cold sober. I did not want the cops to be there with my children home. And so I just walked in there and grabbed all the bottles and just started pouring them down. And I made it to a rum bottle before he got to me. And he yanked it out of my hand and busted me across the side of the face with it. Just as hard as he could. And I was within reach of a knife block, and I grabbed a knife from behind me and realized that my phone was in my pocket. And so I just stood there with a kitchen knife in my hand, scared to death that I thought, I'm going to have to kill this motherfucker with my children home. And that was the worst thought I've ever had as a mother, that I didn't ask for this. I allowed it. And I couldn't blame myself, but I blamed myself, for allowing this person to be. But, what could I have done? I couldn't have him, I couldn't have had him trespass for harassment up until that point. It got to that point, and that was the only point that I could have done anything about him. And that is how scary abuse happens, because you get there, and sometimes it's a slow burn, and there's nothing you can do until it gets to the point of violence. And that was where we were. And I stood there and called the police, and he called his dad, who was a preacher. And the cops got there first, and questioned him, and he was so drunk he couldn't even think straight. And when they handcuffed him, they took pictures of my face and handcuffed him and very calmly removed him from my residence without incident. And as he's going out the door, he threatens my life and spits at me. And I just remembered staring at him and thinking, I'm gonna have to kill him if he ever comes back here, and hoping that he never did. And after a year and a half of court battles, they convinced me to drop the charges on this guy in order to force him into rehab. And it was a pretty big ask. And they were like, it was, I forgot what his name was. That's been 6 years ago. It was
like a lawyer or the DA's office, or?
It was the DA's office. But they
sat down.
They wanted the charges dropped. I wasn't willing to drop charges on him because they were like, we're going to put him in rehab. And so basically what they were going to do was force him into a guilty plea and and just deal with it, like force him into it. Like he could either carry this out in court and lose anyway, or he could take a guilty plea and go directly into rehab, which is what he did. And I felt, the only way I felt good about it is that I was just finally letting it go. After a year and a half, I was tired of going to court. I was tired of going to court, tired of having to see this guy, and I was tired of being scared of him. I bought a gun, and I had a restraining order on him, and I just thought, every night I went to sleep, I thought if he comes back here, I wasn't really scared of him. He had a fake hip, and he's a weaselly little bastard. I wasn't really nervous about it. I really wasn't scared, but I was scared, because at what point does this crazy dude come and light my house on fire? But it's a slow burn, and it was the worst one that I think to this day, like the emotional abuse, I think was harder to get through, but that one was the one that stuck with me because at what point could I have done anything about it until it got to that point?
All of mine have really stuck with me, but that's just because once I got through the psychology program and I was kind of looking back, I was like, wow, my thought process growing up has been really fucked up. And I was able to kind of pinpoint it back to my dad, which sucked because, I love my dad and he's done so much for me, but he was very much I have to be in control. I have to be in power. If we were in an argument, I wasn't allowed to leave the argument. He would follow me into my room. If I tried to shut the door, he's over there with his shoulder just trying to ram it down. Like, I'm going to call the police on you. I swear to God, I'll have you arrested. You better get your ass out here. Even when I was 30 years old, I wanted to take Katie to Disney for the very first time. And he thought Disney was a waste of money. And at that time, he had paid for my car. So I was like, well, I'm taking my daughter to Disney because, I've lived out on my own for 12 years at this point.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you take her, I will report your car stolen and you'll be arrested for that. And he actually did that to me a couple times.
Financial abuse.
Yeah.
That's the one a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah. So my very first abusive relationship was actually the summer after the 6th grade. How crazy is that they abuse that young, but they do. I started dating the most popular guy and I was like, oh my God, he's giving me attention, which I just thought was the best. But then he would do little things like he would choke me, or I remember we were at a birthday party and he held me down. He was just punching me in the throat.
Oh my gosh.
I had never kissed anybody, so in the middle of class when I refused to kiss him because I was scared, I'd never done that before, he headbutted me and busted my lip in the middle of class.
And this was 6th grade?
Yes.
Wow.
And I dated this guy for 2 years. And then I moved on to Joseph, which is the one that I showed you pictures of. I met him online when I was 13. And we went back and forth a lot. And I wanted to have a regular relationship. He was long distance. He lived in New York. I was down here in Alabama. And I wanted to have a regular relationship. So I would try to break things off with him. Because I'm trying to date boys that I can actually see. And every time I do, he's like, I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to I'm going to leave a note and let my parents and everybody know it's all your fault. And so he would constantly sucker me back in because I'm like, oh my God, no, please don't. They won't. No. If they're going to, they'll do it. They're not going to. And so, but I just kept getting suckered back into that. And then another one comes along at age 17. He's kind of physically abusive. So, and there was another one after that. It was her dad. But my mom's like, how do you date this many abusive people? And it wasn't until the end of that program that I was like, because I grew up thinking that this kind of behavior was acceptable.
It was okay. Yeah.
Because that's what I was shown.
You grow up accepting that kind of love, and you feel like you don't deserve another kind of love, and you
think it's normal.
You think it's normal, and then you have to do the work to heal, to get through it. It's a pattern of abuse that so many women, and it breaks my heart, and I've worked so hard. I've recognized that I have a close friend that I've recognized, and I'll drag his ass too. he likes to act like he's a good guy. He's not, he's not a bad guy, because he did things for her, and he fixed her house, and he bought things, but none of it came without a price.
Exactly.
He couldn't do it just to do it.
Exactly.
And I take the little things. Doesn't matter if it's a little thing or a big thing. If they do it and they expect something in return, and you should, if you're in a loving, committed relationship and somebody does something kind to you, there should always be that in the back of your head that says, you know what? Let me return the favor. It is a give and take in a good, healthy relationship. But the problem is in a lot of relationships, it's a lot of give on one side and a lot of take on the other side. And, somebody feels cheated at some point. Mm-hmm. And in her situation, I've sat and watched him do things for her and just attack her. I mean, just attack her self-esteem, attack everything about who she is, because he treated her in a way that was unacceptable, and instead of allowing it, she stood up for herself, and he would throw everything he ever did at her.
Yeah, as if they paid for that right.
As if he paid for the ability to be abusive and emotionally abusive, or lie and cheat and bust shit in her house, or just be a general dickhead. I mean, I swore, and I told her, I said, I've read text messages that he would, just call her horrible, god awful names. And I said, if I ever heard him say this to your face, so help me God. But it was more or less of going, you shouldn't be in this situation. Just trying to help and trying to get her to see her worth. It's so heartbreaking to me to watch anybody that I love go through that, because women are capable, as we've seen in a lot of situations. So there are women that are capable of doing this. I've known men that were capable of, or women that have been through abusive situations, and there's some women who are just as abusive.
1 in 9 men will go through abuse, but that's because it's so underreported.
Yeah,
because it's embarrassing.
Yeah, men.
They're supposed to be men. You can't be abused by a woman.
No.
Like, that's just not okay in society. We can't admit to that. Just like we can't talk about our feelings. Heaven forbid.
No, and I don't know. I'm heartbroken by the women that are having to go through these situations, and I'm grateful for the situation that I've currently found myself in, because 35 years old, and I finally recognized a pattern of behavior that put me in situations to date men that were abusive, and it seemed that I was so hurt. I didn't have a pattern of it growing up. When I got married, I wasn't married to an abusive partner, but after I got hurt and I felt damaged, and I felt like there was parts of me that were missing, that's when I started with the abuse pattern, the dating.
It's easy to get suckered into, especially because it looks so good from the start.
Yes.
And it's not easily recognizable, even though a lot of people want to shame and be like, well, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you see it? Because it's not easy to see until you're so far into it that you're just like, oh my God, is this my life? Am I in an abusive relationship? And then you question it, because they're like, no, you're not. Why would you think that? You're crazy. Why would you even say that? And you're just like, am I crazy?
You're not. You're not crazy. You're not crazy.
It's part of the gaslighting. It works so well.
Feelings are validated, and you start feeling like nothing you say or do is validated. Love, I always go back, because it doesn't matter. If you're Christian, it doesn't matter. Whatever religion you follow, I will stand by what the Corinthians definition of what love is. I stand by it. And I don't care what religion you are, what religion you study. I mean, even if you're not very religious, it's solid. It is a solid guideline to finding someone who truly loves you. And, forgiving people for their faults are one thing, but you can't forgive somebody for a repeated pattern of abuse. You just can.
What's the definition, though? Because I have no idea. I fall in that line of not religious.
Well, we'll post it. I'll send it to you, and we'll post it in this video, because there's a lot of them. But the first few lines, it's love is patient, love is kind. There's so many in Corinthians. I wish I could repeat them all right off the top of my head, but we'll need to post it in this podcast, because I feel like a lot of women need to hear it on a regular basis. And I read something once that said if you're dating somebody, you should put their name in front of each one. And if you can answer that person is those things to you, then you are you're in a good place. The people will fail you, and it's okay. That doesn't mean they're abusive partners, but patterns of abuse are easily detected, but if you're in a healing stage, don't date. That
Right.
I'll stand by that one too. If you're
Agree.
if you're in a healing stage and you've been through real trauma, don't date. And it's not a reflection of you.
The other
being a
person
bad
really doesn't
person.
deserve that.
No.
They deserve you healed. They don't deserve your baggage. And a lot of people come with baggage, but if you've worked through it, then you really don't come with that baggage. Like,
No.
it's just part of your past. It's not your baggage. It's just part of your past.
Yeah, I mean, I dealt with like so much cheating. Like, I feel like every person I dated in the last 10 years was just a cheating bastard
Same.
piece of shit. I mean, just awful cheating. And I thought, okay, trust issues. I'm gonna carry these trust issues, and this is just gonna be a nightmare. And then I got in my current situation, and like I trust him for no other reason than I don't have a good, he doesn't stress me out, and I thought this is worth something. He doesn't stress me out, even though there's situations and things there that I could sit there and twist all day long and try to mold it. I am a calmer person than I was 10 years ago, and I just try to take things for what they appear to be. And usually they are always everything they appear to be. And if your gut's telling you this is not a good situation,
Or this is too good to be true.
too good to be true. Oh my
is.
gosh.
It is.
We could do a whole segment on that because that was
Long story short, yep. Sure is.
too good to be true. Everybody's got flaws, and they'll have one thing. If you can't find one thing that makes you, question it a little bit, then there's probably some bullshit that is being carried with that, a facade of people pretending to be. And you give it a couple of months and everybody's true self comes out, because everybody puts one up. We all put it up in the beginning of relationships because you don't want to, there's certain things you want to let seep out, and instead of vomit directly in their face, some things you just want to gradually
My relationship before this last one, which this one turned into a marriage, so the one before this that was serious, red flags were really early on, but I didn't know what I was looking at. We had been dating for about a month, and we went down to Florida on vacation with a set of my friends. Very much love bombing in the beginning, and so we're down there swimming in the pool, and he just kept on. I'm going to marry you one day. You're going to be my wife. Like, look how hot you are. I can't believe this is going to be my wife. And I said, what's my last name? And he's like, what? I said, you keep calling me your wife, but like, what's my last name? And so he said his last name, because he was like, that's what it's going to be anyway. I was like, no, but can you tell me mine? And he attempted. He tried. It wasn't right. And so we got in a huge fight over that, because I was like, it's what? I said, spell that. Now, I didn't know that he has issues with spelling. I didn't know this. So I told him to spell it, and I don't even know what he spelled. It wasn't what he was saying, but he got really upset.
Was he super hot? Because they're usually kind of dumb.
You've seen him.
Yeah. I mean, some of them, they
Bald.
get a pass. Some of them are hot enough that they get a
Bald,
stupid pass.
tatted, and muscular. But he got so upset because of the spelling thing. He said that I was making fun of him and saying that he was stupid, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so he packed his shit and he left me in Florida. Like, thank God that I had other people down there that I knew, but he packed all of his stuff and he left. And he was gone for several hours. He made it to the Alabama border, and then he decided to come back and like work things out, because I was like, what the fuck is happening? And I should have ended it right there. I really should have. But if I did, I wouldn't have had a great blessing in life, which was another part of the violence cycle that I didn't know, because I didn't know anything about it at the time. When we went down there, I had forgot my birth control, and I was like, hey, we need to swing by a Walgreens. I'm just going to pay for it out of cash. And he was like, no, I don't want you on it, because you're going to be my wife one day and I want to have a family with you. And I was like, the fuck you say? No. And so he wouldn't take me to get it. And I'm just thinking, you know what? I'm going to have to go on the shot so that this guy doesn't know that I'm taking birth control and it doesn't start a fight with him. And my next period never came.
See, I feel for you, because I don't know that a man could ever love bomb me that hard, because I'd be out there with my birth control like Kill Bill. Yeah. Get out of here.
I was only 24 at the time, so I'm thinking, oh, if I'm gonna get pregnant, it's not gonna be that fast. Like, I'll have to let the birth control get out of my system for a good while. Like, I was pretty stupid. No, it happened pretty immediately.
Sometimes things happen like they're supposed to, but the trauma bond is a real thing, and I've witnessed that. I've witnessed so many of my girlfriends that I love deeply going through trauma bonds. You become bonded to this person. That is 99% of what keeps. Well, I won't say 99% because you have the financial abuse that goes on with a lot of stay-at-home moms that go through this,
Which that ended up coming in later on.
Yeah, you stay home. A lot of men want their wives to stay home, and these days there's a big level of trust there. Like, I love any women that are allowed to stay home. I know a few of them that are in great, loving marriages with really wonderful men who are providers that provide for their families. And if it's one of those that, like, I don't want you to work because my wife's not going to work kind of situations, and it's not a, hey, this is what's best for our family situation, pay attention to those red flags. If a man keeps his money from you and doesn't share finances, maybe get a job.
Yeah, he had asked me to quit when our daughter was really young, and so I thought about it a little bit, and I did. And then not long after that, it started about how you don't ever contribute to any of these fucking bills, and I'm like, bitch, with what? Or his birthday came around, and I worked like a couple odd jobs, more like promotional stuff, and so I bought him what I could afford, and he was like, God, this sucks. Like, are you serious with this? Look at this piece of shit. This is all you could do? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, because you're a fucking bum. Just like constantly. But he knew I couldn't leave because I had no money.
Yeah.
And so when I would start working again, that's when he would start being really nice, or he would just be extra shitty to the point that it would like shove me out of the house. And I had a really hard time getting through school during this period. I didn't get through school until I got married to my now husband, because it was hard to finish school when I was constantly having to pack up all of my things and my child and move out in the middle of the night, because it came to that a lot. It came to that probably like 4 times in the middle of the night.
This day and age, I'll scream that from the rooftops. Ladies, always have a way out. You don't want that, and you really don't want to go into any marriage or relationship having that mentality. But trust me on the have a way out. There should be some financial independence for everyone, and I don't feel that just for women in general. Everybody needs financial independence, because you as an adult to depend on another adult, it's a hard road to navigate. But it's just like the those abusive patterns. Like, look what all I did for you, and you've done nothing, and you owe me this or you owe me that, and but the abuse comes in so many different forms, and I can honestly say I've only had 2 really effectively abusive relationships, and the second one, I wasn't aware it was abusive till it was over, and that's I think that's the scariest one. The other one was so obvious from day one. I mean, he was just a horrible shit person, and I'll say that. I mean, I heard a while back, like, I heard that he was like on his deathbed, and then I was like, Jesus wouldn't like that. And, so I thought about it for a second, and then I heard he was gonna have to have a leg amputated, and I was like, Jesus wouldn't like that either. So, I had to really deep down into what kind of person is Lindsay.
It caused a lot of trauma within me that I didn't know that I had. I worked for a pharmacy for a long time. I can't say the name because I actually signed an ND saying that I can't talk about it. But new management came in and they fired the entire staff. And even though I was married when this happened, I went into a panic.
Was it like a big pharmacy? Mm-hmm. Was it small screens? Or Bite Raid?
And they got rid of everybody, and I'm just freaking out because even though I'm married, I'm thinking, oh my God, if I need to get out, I can't. And that was like my first go-to was, if I need to get out, I can't.
Yeah.
I had no reason to need to get out, but if I had to get out, I can't.
You always have to have a way out. There just needs to be.
It's terrifying.
Just pay attention to the red flags. And red flags, we could do a whole segment on red flag. I could do a whole segment on red flags and just sit down. If I go home, I actually might do that at homework. I might go home and like write down all the red flags I ignored in my emotionally abusive relationship, because to this day, the guy that hit me with the liquor bottle pissed me off more than it hurt. I mean, it did hurt, but you know, I've swore I was one of those women, and you know, certainly not passing any judgment, because you know, if you're a woman and you're being abused and you see this podcast, please reach out, because I can promise you I can send you to tons of help, and women help women, and you know, I'm here for you, Desiree. I know Desiree would, and you know, if there are women that are in abusive situations, you don't know how to get out, please reach out to somebody. And I say that wholeheartedly, like there's no judgment here if you know you're struggling with a way out, but you know, you ignore red flags. I ignored so many red flags, but you know, I swore if I ever had a man hit me, put hands on me, I told that guy, you ever put hands on me, you do it once. He did it once, and he learned a very valuable and super expensive lesson in, you know, fuck around and find out, because that's what you get with me, and I swore that. But a lot of women are not that way. I was financially independent, and my daddy didn't raise no bitch, so I was a different breed, and for other women, I feel like I was there to stand up for other women, and I will continue to do so all day, every day. If you can't get out, reach out to somebody, because there are lots of people out here that can help you. I mean, I saw a thing on the internet the other day about a moving company. These guys move women out of their homes. They will, I mean, they're like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, they will move it, and they'll do it for free. They will come in and they'll set women up. They donate furniture. They'll come bring box trucks. I need to look up so we can tag the company.
That's
they had a
really
really cool,
amazing.
I've got it screenshot somewhere, but these guys come out and they will, I mean, it's like their special ops will come in and sneak in. They coordinate with these women to get them out safely without issues, and they're in abusive situations. They go in with the whole team and they get these women out within an hour. They're out and they're set up in a new place with new furniture and everything, and I'm like, holy schniz at the good people in the world. It's unbelievable that somebody thought this is something that needs to happen. But
I have one more. It was the Joseph guy that used to threaten to kill himself when I was a teenager. Eventually, it got to the point that I moved up there to be with him, because we did this back and forth for 8.5 years. So that was a long time to kind of get in my head and just like really plant seeds in there. And so he asked me to move up to New York with him, and my parents were like, no. And so I did anyway, because I was 21. I could do what I wanted at that point. And my dad, being who he was, and the fact that my car was in his name, he took my car away. So I'm up here in New York, the guy starts being abusive, and I can't leave him. Couldn't leave him because I had no ride, and I had to live with him. I think I was up there for about a year and a half, and he started to get more physically abusive, and I had to wait until my dad could make time to come up and get me, because he had taken my car away. Isn't that wonderful? That's such a lovely story. Let's drink to that.
Let's drink to not being in those situations anymore. Let's drink to recognizing red flags and healing journey.
Amen to that.
Amen. We're all here to heal. Fuck these dudes, man.
On that note, Des and Lindsay signing off. Oh.
We got a thumbs up. Are we gonna have a theme song?
We should. What should it sound like?
I don't know. Oh, I got it. I hear it in my head. It's like classical music because of the Tea Party. We're so stupid.